SABC News presentation.
Good morning and welcome to a view from the Houses of Parliament on this Tuesday morning. My name is Abra Barbia. We were off air yesterday morning because of an extended morning live program, but we are back to catch up on lost time. We'll be looking at question time in the National Assembly, questions to the Deputy President and also the governance cluster of ministers. We go to our first question. Over the years, members of parliament, especially opposition party members, have been frustrated by the way cabinet ministers have been treating their questions, particularly written questions that called for written replies. At times, members have to wait ages for their replies to their questions. As leader of government business in the House, it is Deputy President Mothlante's responsibility to ensure that members of the executive abide by the rules and in this case promptly respond to questions. And during question time in the National Assembly, the IFP's Velaphi Ndlovu wanted to know from the Deputy President if he was going to make sure that questions submitted before the end of March 2012 would still be responded to. In his response, the Deputy President said he submitted reports on overdue replies at each cabinet meeting. He said ministers were well aware of their obligation in terms of the Constitution to account collectively and individually to Parliament on how they exercise their functions. But Mr. Mothlante said there were mitigating circumstances.
Having made inquiries regarding the reasons for failure to reply to the 13 outstanding questions in the period that the Honorable Ndlovu refers to, it would appear that the difficulty lies in the desire on the part of ministers to provide accurate information so that they do not end up misleading the House. And the nature of the questions is very extensive. In some cases, covers provinces as well. And so that honorable members account for the delays. However, ministers are reminded on a regular basis at each and every sitting of cabinet.
In his supplementary question, Mr. Ndlovu said if there were problems, drastic action must be taken to deal with it. He said MPs were serious about the questions they submit.
It seems as if there are challenges, Deputy President, because if the ministers can't fulfill their function because of the problem in their offices of doing so, something has to be done. One is that if people who are supposed to respond to their questions are not suitable to that, they must fire them and employ other people who are qualified to do the job. Two is that when we ask the questions, when this House asks the questions, we ask the question for the information, not for our people, not for our own sake, but for the sake of the country and for the sake of other people too, so that they will learn from those questions. Therefore, if the ministers can't fulfill their functions, that means they are derelict their duties to do so. What are we going to do about it? Because steps has to be taken to those people who are supposed to do the job properly.
Indeed, as I stated, ministers are well aware of their obligations to account to this House. My role and my duty really is very similar to the role of flight attendants who, even to frequent flyers, continue to remind them of the safety procedures. This is what I do to my cabinet colleagues. I do remind them of this obligation. I do insist that they should respond to all questions without failure. There are some, as I indicated earlier on, there are departments and ministers who always have a clean slate, no outstanding questions whatsoever. And we've said to colleagues who have accumulated outstanding questions that the formula does exist in this colleagues' department. So please do draw lessons from that and copy what works so that we can all have a clean slate and account to Parliament.
Mr. Ndlovu's concerns were shared by members of all parties. Mrs. Julie Killian of the Congress of the People said the situation was actually worsening, with the President of the Republic one of the biggest culprits.
The very genuine undertakings from the President and actually Deputy President, and also the steps he took, is unfortunately not adequate at this stage, Honourable Deputy Speaker, because there was a decline in the number of answers given from 2010 to 2011. It in fact worsened by 47%. And some of the worst offenders are unfortunately the President of the country. He is at 22% non-response to questions. The Correctional Services Minister, 48.39%. Corporate Governance, 29.46%. Communication at 20%, and obviously this is totally unacceptable. So despite the fact that the NO rules provide for 10 parliamentary working days after publication of the questions, some 254 questions remained unanswered towards the end of last year. We therefore want to know what other steps you are contemplating to take to make a turnaround, to make sure that the people respect the Constitution and their duty to account to Parliament to give the necessary information, including possible deductions from their salaries.
I can only use persuasion and to remind, constantly be a gadfly to my colleagues in terms of reminding them of their responsibilities. The powers to impose the power to impose any penalties rests with this august House. And so, indeed, if there's to be some disincentives, they've got to come from this House. But in Cabinet, we have a standing item on every Cabinet meeting agenda dealing with this very issue of outstanding questions. Even this morning, provided my colleagues who have outstanding questions the list of all the questions that they have to respond to.
Honourable Deputy President, to say that I'm stunned by your answer about the ministries not being able to provide proper answers is putting it mildly. Sir, indirectly you are referring to the incompetence of ministries to answer questions. In this day of IT and information readily available, there should not be a waiting period of longer than 10 working days. Sir, I also wish to correct your figures. You said that, that 13 questions remain unanswered. As of Friday, the 19th of October, 332 questions remain unanswered. And sir, if you are saying that you are using the method of being the flight attendant, then I think you're offering your ministers far too much of a life jacket, because there isn't a penalty, there's no explanation, and quite frankly, it smacks of arrogance that they refuse to answer questions. On the 24th of November last year, you yourself said that there are no checks and balances in place, and you will attend to that, and I would like to know, what have you done so far 11 months down the line?
The questions I'm responding to, posed by Honourable Minister, Honourable Member Ndlovu, were before the 31st of March 2012. So the question was very specific. It referred to 13 questions. I wasn't, by any stretch of imagination, suggesting that those are the only outstanding questions. I do have a list of outstanding questions that I presented to my colleagues this morning in the meeting of Cabinet. Unfortunately, I've got the numbers. Unfortunately, I haven't totaled them up. I could be giving you the exact figure, as it were.
We have another question after the break, a question dealing with the separation of powers between the three arms of state. Do stay with us.
It's my home.
It's so embarrassing for my husband when his shirts are dull and stained. But I just can't get them out or get the whiteness back. I had the same problem, but now I use Vanish Crystal White Powder.
Just add Vanish to a leading detergent. Its Power Lift formula contains oxy-action to remove even set-in stains and turns clothes 3 shades whiter.
Impossible! It's so clean and white. It's possible with Vanish.
Trust Pink. Forget stains. Now also available in a 200-gram trial pack at an attractive price. Buy it now for amazing results or your money back guaranteed.
As machine manufacturers, we will put Omo Liquid to a very tough challenge, a real one. Now, let's do the test. Only 1 cap of Omo Liquid is enough to remove tough stains, even in a cold wash. Omo Liquid passed the ultimate test. LG recommends Omo Liquid's tough stain removal, even in a cold wash.
This card entitles you to enforce your legal rights. From 130 rands per month, it's about making legal services available to all South Africans. Just SMS rights to 31765 and someone will call you back to explain all the benefits, terms and conditions. Thank you. Cover includes civil, criminal and labor-related matters. Whatever your problem, qualified legal advisors are